Have you ever stopped to consider what it really means when a woman lives alone? No boyfriend, no partner, no obvious interest in finding one. The cultural reflex is to assume she's been hurt or that she's given up. Maybe she's too proud. Maybe she's bitter. But those assumptions reveal far more about us, our collective insecurities, our simplistic narratives, than they do about her. Because the woman who lives alone isn't necessarily avoiding something. She might be confronting something the rest of us can't bear to face. Herself. This isn't about loneliness. It's not about a lack of romantic prospects or failed relationships. It's about a deliberate, difficult, and often painful decision to forego distraction and comfort in order to develop strength and clarity. And that decision, especially in a world that rewards validation over substance, is nothing short of heroic. Now let me be clear. I'm not suggesting that solitude is inherently virtuous. Prolonged isolation can corrode the soul just as easily as it can fortify it. But when solitude is chosen consciously, when it's accepted as the price of becoming something better, more integrated, it becomes a crucible. A place where chaos is confronted and order is built from the inside out. A woman who walks that path is not running away from life. She's running toward responsibility. And responsibility, real responsibility, is the antidote to suffering. Not happiness, not comfort, not romantic affirmation, but the structured burden of self-discipline and self-authorship. The weight of carrying your life forward with integrity. That's what gives life meaning. And she knows it. You see, we live in a time where emotional dependence is often sold as connection, and self-sacrifice, particularly for women, is confused with virtue. Be easygoing, be nice, don't be too much, don't be too smart, don't want too much, smile, be liked, and if you're alone, there must be something wrong with you. But the woman who chooses solitude has stepped outside of that narrative. She's stopped trading pieces of herself for approval. She's learned that approval, when earned at the cost of self-betrayal, is nothing but disguised contempt. She doesn't need to be saved. In fact, she's tired of being offered rescue in exchange for obedience. She isn't cold, she's clear. She's not angry, she's awake. She's not bitter, she's disciplined. And discipline, as any mature person knows, is the foundation of freedom. Because without it, you're a slave to chaos, to other people's opinions, to your own impulsive emotions. The woman who lives alone has tasted that slavery. Maybe she gave too much. Maybe she twisted herself to fit a mold that wasn't designed for someone with her depth. Maybe she stayed too long in places that offered comfort at the expense of growth. But at some point, she stopped. She realized that trading authenticity for connection wasn't worth it, that survival isn't the same as living, that being seen, really seen, matters more than being liked. That realization doesn't come easy. It usually shows up at the bottom, after betrayal, disappointment, failure. But that's how all transformation begins. As Nietzsche said, one must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. And this woman, she knows that chaos. She's danced in it, she's burned in it, and she's come out more whole. Her solitude isn't absence, it's refinement. It's not an empty space, it's a proving ground. She's not alone because she couldn't find someone. She's alone because she finally realized that building a life worth living was more important than filling a void with half-hearted connection. She's not avoiding love. She's redefining it, raising its standards, and that makes people uncomfortable. Why? Because when someone chooses solitude with dignity, they break the social contract that says you're only valuable if you're attached. They call into question the collective fear of being alone. And they expose the transactional nature of so many modern relationships, those built on insecurity, manipulation, need. There is a reason this woman seems intimidating. It's not because she's hostile. It's because she doesn't flinch. She doesn't chase. She doesn't perform. She doesn't fold just to keep someone around. She simply is. And when a person simply is, when their presence isn't a performance but an expression of grounded individuality, they become untouchable. Not in the sense of arrogance or superiority, but in the sense that they can't be swayed by false promises or superficial attention. People think they want someone like her, but to truly be with her, you'd have to meet her where she is, not try to pull her down, not demand that she shrink. You'd have to confront your own weakness, your own shadow, your own lack of integration. That's why so many walk away. And that's fine with her. She doesn't need everyone to understand. She's not here to convert or convince. Her life is her message. Her boundaries are her language. Her silence is not an invitation to fill. It's a mirror, one that shows people what they're not willing to become. In a world obsessed with speed, she values stillness. In a culture that rewards noise, she embodies quiet strength. And in relationships built on need, she stands as a symbol of sufficiency. She doesn't crave applause. She doesn't require validation. And yet, paradoxically, it's exactly that independence that makes her magnetic, because there's something irresistible about someone who doesn't need you. It means that if they choose you, it's because they see you, not because they need to be rescued or because they're trying to escape something. That's not weakness. That's maturity. And maturity is rare. The woman who chooses to live alone undergoes a transformation that few people ever attempt. Not because it's impossible, but because it's brutally difficult. Her solitude isn't a void. It's a space where she reorganizes her soul. And that journey forces her to confront every part of herself that used to depend on external validation just to feel whole. We tend to think that being alone is a punishment, something reserved for the broken, the rejected, the unlucky. But there's another way to look at it. Solitude, when voluntarily embraced, becomes an initiation. And initiations, as every ancient story tells us, are painful. They demand that we shed illusions, release attachments, and reconstruct ourselves from the ground up. This woman didn't choose solitude because she gave up on love. She chose it because she finally understood what love isn't. She stopped mistaking attention for affection. She stopped confusing desire for respect. She stopped accepting half-truths packaged as emotional intimacy. And that kind of awakening isn't glamorous. It doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens in fragments, across nights of silence, days of doubt, moments when old patterns call her back and she has to say, "No, not anymore." Her growth is forged through disappointment that no longer hurts, not because she's numb, but because it has been metabolized into wisdom. She's not avoiding life. She's engaging with it more honestly than ever before. And in doing so, she begins to terrify people. Why? Because she no longer plays the game. She no longer smiles to smooth things over. She no longer softens her voice to seem less threatening. She no longer minimizes her brilliance just to keep someone else comfortable. And when a woman stops apologizing for her wholeness, she starts shaking the very foundations of relationships built on imbalance. You'll hear people call her cold, detached, arrogant, but those are just projections. Carl Jung, and this is something I've spoken about at length, warned that what we do not face in ourselves, we project onto others. The same rule applies here. Her stillness reflects back other people's chaos. Her presence shines a spotlight on their absence. Her independence reminds them of everything they haven't built in themselves. You see, we have cultural scripts, narratives we're all supposed to follow. One of the most insidious is this: a woman's value is tied to her ability to be chosen. That's why when she steps out of the marketplace, when she stops competing, stops performing, stops waiting to be validated, the system short-circuits. She's no longer playing by the rules. And when someone breaks the rules and thrives anyway, it forces everyone else to re-examine why they're still playing. But she isn't doing this to rebel. This isn't some...
And sovereignty, in a psychological sense, is the ability to govern one's self, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually. The woman who chooses to be alone is practicing self-governance. She's taken on the responsibility of constructing her inner world. She's built boundaries not to isolate, but to preserve, to protect something sacred, her own development. People misunderstand that kind of clarity. They see restraint and assume repression. They see boundaries and assume rejection. But what they're actually seeing is strength. Strength that doesn't seek permission. Strength that doesn't beg. Strength that, while it may appear silent, speaks volumes in presence alone. And it's precisely that presence, calm, steady, deliberate, that draws in criticism and fascination alike. In a society that's obsessed with speed, she slows down. In a culture that rewards exposure, she preserves mystery. In a world addicted to shallow availability, she cultivates depth. And because of that, she is often met with suspicion. Why is she alone? What's wrong with her? Isn't she afraid of dying alone? But those questions say more about the person asking them than they do about her. She's not afraid of dying alone. She's afraid of living a life that's inauthentic. She'd rather sit in silence with herself than endure noise that empties her soul. She understands something many never will: the difference between company and connection, between being liked and being loved, between being seen and being used. She's not unreachable. She's just unwilling to be reached by people who refuse to see her clearly. And that decision, to wait, to discern, to hold out for something real, is misinterpreted by the world as arrogance. But it's not arrogance. It's integrity. She knows what she brings. She knows the cost she's paid to become who she is, and she refuses to barter her peace for the illusion of closeness. That kind of discernment is powerful, and it unsettles the system. Because when a woman walks away from the easy, the performative, the emotionally cheap, she threatens the fragile architecture of a world that depends on her compliance. And when enough women do that, the rules change, the expectations shift. Relationships evolve from transactions to transformations. But let's be honest, most people aren't ready for that. They still want the mask, the performance, the pliability. But she's not interested in performing anymore. She wants to be seen, truly seen. And here's the challenge. Being truly seen requires both people to show up without armor, without illusion, without scripts. Most can't do that. So they walk away. And she lets them go. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. She doesn't plead. She doesn't chase. She simply remains. And in that remaining, she becomes a kind of quiet revolution, a living contradiction to the myth that a woman's worth is tied to her relationship status. She dismantles that myth by existing, not loudly, not defiantly, but authentically. Her existence becomes a kind of mirror, one that forces others to ask, what am I building? Who am I when no one is watching? Do I even like myself without the applause? That's why people fear her. She's not dangerous because she's angry. She's dangerous because she's awake. She's not loud because she's trying to prove a point. She's quiet because she's already proven it to herself. You see, there's something fundamentally different about a woman who has walked through her own fire and come out intact. She doesn't move through life the way she used to, the way most people still do. She doesn't seek approval through her reflection in someone else's eyes. She sees herself, and that changes everything. Her solitude is not an accident. It's not punishment. It's the product of conscious choices made over time. And every no she's uttered, every date she walked away from, every conversation she left mid-sentence, every offer she declined, has been an act of alignment. Not rejection, but precision. She's measuring everything against a deeper standard. Not, will this fill the void, but will this honor the self I've fought to build? There's a kind of power in that. The power of someone who has tasted chaos and chosen to build order, not externally through control or conquest, but internally through structure and principle. That's not just admirable, that's rare. And in that rarity, she finds herself misunderstood. They say she's too much, but what they mean is she's not easily manageable. They say she's too picky, but what they mean is she knows her value. They say she'll end up alone, but what they really fear is that she won't, and that her life, without compromise, will expose their own concessions. She doesn't want perfection. That's a juvenile demand. What she wants is presence. Someone mature enough to sit across from her, grounded in their own being, not threatened by hers. She's no longer interested in promises. Words mean nothing if not backed by character. She's attuned now to the quiet signals of integrity, the way someone handles disappointment, the way they listen, the way they hold space without trying to fix, shrink, or control. And that discernment, earned through pain, not theory, makes her a different kind of partner. She's not looking to be saved. She's not even looking to be completed. She's looking for alignment, for someone who has walked their own path and is still walking it, someone who doesn't need her to lose herself just so they can feel whole. She knows now that love isn't about merging, it's about meeting, and that kind of love, whole meeting whole, is deeply threatening to people who are still using relationships to mask their wounds. Because she's not interested in being someone's emotional band-aid. She's not trying to be their mother, their savior, or their therapist. She wants truth, even if it costs her comfort. She'd rather be alone than sit across from someone who can't meet her in that place. And here's what most people don't understand: that solitude isn't her fallback. It's her foundation. She doesn't fear being alone. She's built a life where solitude is not a gap to be filled, but a rhythm that keeps her centered. If someone enters that space, they must add to it, not disturb it. And very few people know how to do that. Because it takes maturity to be with someone who doesn't need you. It takes strength to love someone who won't collapse just to keep you close. And most people, consciously or not, are looking for someone to collapse. But she won't. She can bend, she can stretch, she can compromise when compromise doesn't cost her soul, but she won't dim, she won't shrink, she won't perform to be chosen. That's the thing about emotional maturity. It comes with boundaries that feel like walls to the uninitiated, but they're not walls, they're filters. And they're necessary, not because she's bitter, but because she's clear. She knows what chaos cost her. She knows what self-abandonment feels like, and she's unwilling to go back. Her standards aren't a defense mechanism, they're a map of her own becoming, and she holds them not out of pride, but out of loyalty to the woman she's fought to become. And so she waits, not passively, not longingly, but actively, living, building, refining, creating. Her life isn't on pause until someone arrives. It's in motion, unfolding with or without anyone else, because she's realized something most people never do, that love isn't supposed to consume you. It's supposed to support you. It's supposed to witness your becoming, not halt it, not compete with it, not control it. And until that kind of love comes, she walks alone, not in sadness, but in sovereignty, not out of spite, but out of vision, because she sees what most don't, that relationships built from lack will always demand sacrifice, not the noble kind, but the kind that erodes identity,
steals peace, and numbs the soul. She's had enough of that. She's learned that being chosen isn't the same as being valued, that attention isn't love, that chemistry without character is just attraction dressed as destiny, and that passion without principle burns out, fast and loud, leaving ash where something beautiful might have grown. So now, she waits for the quiet kind of love, the love that shows up, that doesn't flinch, that doesn't flail when she says no or asks for space, the kind that listens before reacting, that builds trust slowly, that never uses intimacy as leverage, because that's what she's offering. Something rooted, something real, something earned through years of peeling back the layers, not just of who she is, but who she never wants to be again. That's the kind of love she's built within herself. And she knows, when someone finally arrives who carries the same weight, the same depth, the same scarred clarity, it won't feel like surrender. It'll feel like recognition. Until then, she's not lonely. She's whole. And wholeness, though often confused with arrogance, is nothing more than this: the refusal to outsource your worth, the willingness to walk alone, the strength to hold your own hand when no one else will. That's what makes her dangerous, not her independence, but her emotional responsibility. Because she's not here to feed off others. She's here to grow with them, and she won't settle for anything less. There's a concept in Jungian psychology called individuation, the process of becoming fully yourself by integrating the unconscious, by facing your shadows and bringing them into the light. It's not about becoming perfect, it's about becoming whole, and Jordan Peterson often builds on this idea in his own way. Life is suffering, and the path toward meaning is not to run from that suffering, but to take it on voluntarily, to carry your burden, confront your chaos, and in doing so, give form to the formless. That is the essence of what this woman has done. She didn't just choose solitude, she descended into it, into the parts of herself that were long neglected, long misunderstood. She faced what most people spend their lives avoiding: her fears, her abandonment wounds, her ancestral pain, the generational scripts she was handed about what it means to be a woman, a partner, a person of value. She didn't just grieve her past, she studied it. She didn't just survive her disappointments, she translated them into strength. She didn't just escape unhealthy relationships, she rewrote the contract altogether. And this process wasn't linear. There were moments of doubt, nights filled with silence so heavy it hurt, days where loneliness whispered lies. But she stayed the course. Not because it was easy, but because something deeper in her had awakened. A voice that said, "You're worth more than what you've accepted." That's the voice of individuation. That's the voice of the soul reclaiming its power. And once you hear that voice, once you live according to its truth, you can't go back. You can't unknow your worth. You can't pretend crumbs are enough. You can't shrink to fit a version of yourself that never served you. So now she walks differently. She speaks differently. She no longer needs to convince anyone of her value, not because she thinks she's better than others, but because she knows she's no longer willing to be less for them. That clarity, that inner structure, is rare, and it's often met with resistance. People who are still fragmented may call her guarded. Those who depend on others for their sense of identity may see her as threatening, but that's not her problem. She's not responsible for how others perceive the work she's done to build herself. She's not looking for sympathy. She's not looking for permission. She's building a life that mirrors her internal world, ordered, honest, free. And freedom for her doesn't mean detachment. It doesn't mean apathy. It means this: I know who I am, and I will not bargain with my soul. That's the real revolution. Not independence for its own sake, but sovereignty that creates space for conscious connection, the kind that doesn't feed on scarcity, the kind that doesn't need performance, the kind that thrives in truth. She knows now that love is not the goal. Integration is. Because only through integration of her shadow and her light, her strength and her softness, can she love from a place that doesn't dissolve her. That's what makes her so different. She's not just waiting for the right person. She's becoming the right person, the kind who can receive without losing, who can give without draining, who can choose without fearing the cost of honesty. Her entire life is a quiet rebellion against the lie that a woman must be chosen to be worthy. She has chosen herself, again and again, in the face of doubt, in the face of pressure, in the face of well-meaning voices that said, "You're being too picky," or "Aren't you afraid you'll end up alone?" Yes, she heard them, and for a long time she believed them. But not anymore, because now she knows something essential. Aloneness is not the same as absence. There is a sacred fullness in solitude, a fullness that doesn't scream, it doesn't seek, it simply is. She doesn't need loud declarations or constant affirmation. Her presence is enough. Her inner alignment speaks before she does. You can feel it in the way she walks into a room without needing to dominate it, in the way she speaks only when it matters, in the way she holds eye contact, not to challenge but to witness. And if someone misreads her silence for weakness, they don't understand that true power never shouts. It radiates. This woman radiates. Not because she has something to prove, but because she's resolved the war within herself. She doesn't live in reaction. She lives in response, measured, intentional, present. And that presence disarms people, not because it's confrontational, but because it exposes everything that isn't whole. That's why the system finds her dangerous. She doesn't play by scarcity. She doesn't need to compete for attention. She's not waiting for a savior because she stopped playing the role of victim. She's not waiting for someone to give her value because she already knows her value is intrinsic, non-negotiable, and earned through every scar she wears with quiet pride. And what comes next? Maybe someone enters her life. Maybe not. But that's not the point anymore. She's not a woman in waiting. She's a woman in motion. She's becoming, always becoming. And what she attracts, if anything, will be a reflection of that becoming, not a detour from it. If a partner comes, it will be someone who's done their own work, someone who doesn't fear her strength but reveres it, someone who doesn't want to fix her, soften her, or possess her, but walk beside her, shoulder to shoulder. And if not, then she continues, not out of pride, not out of defense, but out of loyalty to the truth she's uncovered. Because some women are not here to be molded. They are here to remind the world what it means to be whole, to live without apology, to walk without compromise, to love without self-erasure, to lead without shouting, to choose, not chase. This woman, the one who lives alone without a man, is not lost. She is aligned. She is not waiting. She is walking. And that walk, marked by self-respect, truth, and quiet power, is the loudest love story she's ever written. So if this resonated with you, if you found yourself reflected in any part of her journey, I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments. What stood out to you? What parts of your own story echoed in her silence, her strength, her solitude? This channel is a space for thoughtful dialogue, not just noise. So if you value depth, reflection, and honest conversations about life, relationships, and meaning, consider subscribing. That way you won't miss what's coming next. And if you believe this message could help someone, a friend, a sister, maybe even yourself 5 years ago, hit the like button, share it, and let the algorithm know that this kind of content matters. Until next time, take care of your soul and don't be afraid to walk alone, especially if that's the only path that leads you back to yourself.